Hey, what is up, everyone? Today I'm going to talk about how the SpaceX IPO and all IPOs actually help insiders get rich and retail ends up getting more poor. So I've lost a lot of money, guys, on IPOs in the past, and I'm someone who always wants to invest. I really genuinely think that your 9 to 5 is not enough to get you ahead, especially today when there's so much money printing and inflation is much higher than they state. I think IPOs are also really exciting. I think that it's always fun to, get in and get out and all that fun stuff. But there's a lot of natural and unnatural buzz associated with IPOs. I genuinely think that there's a lot of things that I really wanted to bring up. Many people I haven't heard from in years about investing reached out regarding this IPO. It's kind of like when Bitcoin hits all-time highs. When Bitcoin hits all-time highs, you get a text from everyone. Hey, should I get in? You know? Same thing here. Everyone was talking about the SpaceX IPO. Everyone was reaching out. They were talking about it. They were calling, this and that. And I think this is a huge yellow flag. If everyone's talking about something, if everyone's talking about Bitcoin, if everyone's talking about an IPO, maybe there was a narrative that was sold by some very, very powerful people to try to sell the bag to you. Right. And, these roadshows, they really hype it up. These investment bankers, underwriters, large investors, and the public, they interest them. That's their job. They got to interest them. But sometimes it blows out of proportion. I mean, you should have seen all over the media how much this thing was put in front of our faces, right? And what if it, did really well? You didn't want to miss out, right? Well, I got some stories here. So, a lot of examples of IPOs not doing well: Figma, Pets.com, Groupon, eToys, Bankrupt are all down 70 to 95%. Also Fold. I'm a Fold investor, down 95%. A lot of these companies that went public, they ended up losing everything. I mean, if you bought just 10,000 shares of Pets.com, you lost it all. Groupon, you lost 90%. eToys, bankrupt. Figma, you're down probably 50, 60, 70% plus. And that was just within a year. So, that's not to say some haven't done well, and I'll give you a few examples of those. But you need to know what you're getting into, because Groupon, for example, the concept is really cool. I mean, and same with Figma. A lot of these companies, they have really nice concepts, and they're doing things that I think are actually going to help change the world for the better, but they all went bankrupt, right? I can still think of all the Groupons I've used and saved a lot of money with those, right? So some of the IPOs that have done very well is like Uber, Visa, Meta, Snowflake, Amazon. They all have between 100 and 7,000% returns. Same thing with Tesla, right? Probably even more, 10,000% returns. The point I'm trying to make is this: what did all the worst IPOs have in common? None of them were profitable, right? Uber is profitable, Visa is profitable, Meta, I think they're profitable, Snowflake, Amazon, all of them are profitable. Tesla, profitable. Figma, they're not, Pets.com, all those companies, they didn't do well because they realized, wait, this is just smoke and mirrors. So the lesson here is that so many IPOs do poorly and some do well. I did some research on this actually, and they indicated that between 30 and 40% actually perform well over the long run, whereas 60 to 70% perform poorly over the long run. So let's just say hypothetically, if this were true, right? 70% perform poorly over the long run. Why not wait? Like, let's just say you wanted to buy Groupon. Why not wait to buy it when the hype has worn off, and then you can at least buy it at a discount instead of just waiting or buying and then waiting and you're holding a bag, right? You don't want to buy and hold a bag. I think SpaceX will be hyped for the next couple months. I think most of it will drop in the next 12 months. And then I think over the long run, it will actually do well. I would never bet against Elon personally. And I haven't. I've been betting on him, and it's been doing very well for me. Tesla's done excellent, right? It's one of my best stocks. I think the reason why it's not going to do well over the next 12 months, in my opinion, I could be wrong. This isn't financial advice. But the reason why I don't think it'll do well is because all of the lockups are going to be freed up over the next 12 months, at least. So you're going to get different tranches where, the float will increase, which means the number of shares will go out on the market and more people will be able to dump their shares. And who's the biggest buyer? Retail, right? So I think once when the lockup period ends and all the existing people, they sell, then I think you're going to see what the true value of this stock is, right? I think once when that lockup ends, and it's not ending yet, it's ending over the next, and it's going in a phased approach. So like 90 days, 180 days, 365. So it's not going to all be at once because they don't want that to happen, right? They don't want us. They want people to buy at these elevated prices. So the NASDAQ situation, I don't know if you guys heard about this. This is wild. Many indexes, they bent the rules to include SpaceX in their index. This was just recently, guys. A lot of these 401k investors are going to be buying SpaceX without even knowing it, even if they don't want to, because it's included in the index. And these indexes changed the rules recently to be able to put this in there. So your retirement fund is going to hold SpaceX, which is not a profitable company. How fair is that? Everyone tells you go buy index funds. It's the safest bet. Well, now you're going to have 1/100th of a company that you may not want in your portfolio. I think 401k investors, they got to be careful. They need to look at what allocations they have. I think, the Russell 1000, FTSE, NASDAQ 100, and VTI, they will all be buying SpaceX in the next couple months. And so they adjusted these rules. They adjusted these rules because they know they need passive flows to come in. It's not going to get propped up on its own. Just days before, that's the wildest thing. Like, if you're going to adjust the rules, wouldn't you do it in the beginning of the year if you knew you were going to do this? This just looks bad. The optics just look bad that they're doing this. So, I don't know. I just think the average folk will become exit liquidity. And a lot of these powerful people up top and rich people that were insiders for a long time, they'll dump at these elevated prices because there's now a new floor. These passive flows is the new floor. My views on this valuation. So I think there's a lot of excellent companies out there. And I think humans, we're naturally very greedy. Now, I'm not saying you're greedy or I'm greedy. I'm just saying naturally we're greedy. These lead underwriters like the JP Morgans, the Goldmans, the Morgan Stanleys, I think it's in their best interest to set things high. They want people to buy at these high prices. They want to exit at these high prices. They want to make money. And I think if the fundamentals matter, like we saw in The Intelligent Investor, it's like that book used to really matter, but I guess it doesn't anymore. It would trade, in my opinion, around 20 to 30 a share right now. And even then it would be expensive. But I understand that's not how the world works. People told me in 2016, don't buy Tesla, it's not profitable. And you know what? I listened to some of them, and I really took it on the chin because of that. I mean, really, I really genuinely thought that Tesla wasn't great back then because of like the fundamental investor said, no, it is not a good company. You cannot buy that. I learned from Standard Education. Look at it now. It had like a split, 10-to-1 split at least, and it went up several thousand% since then. And if I would have looked at the future and made a bet, I think I would have done much better. So sometimes it's not just about trading the fundamentals. You've got to look at the narratives. You got to take everything together is what I'm saying. Not just the narratives, not just the fundamentals, everything together. The growth rate, the enterprise value, the insiders, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I still made a lot of money investing in Tesla, but I think I could have done a lot better if I would have thought through it a bit more. You know, I've had probably more worse IPOs than great IPOs, personally, that I've invested in. But Bitcoin, every coin is generated by proof of work, which is mining every 10 minutes, right? So I genuinely think that Bitcoin is a better investment than most of these companies because there's no insider allocation. Yes, Satoshi has 1 million coins. We know that. But all these coins were generated by mining, right? There was no insider allocation. There was just early adopters and those that used the faucets and those that mined. I buy Bitcoin. Personally, I think it's more fair than stocks. I think stocks, it's a game where the closer you are to the money printer, to the elite, the bankers, the underwriters, those are the ones that get ahead with the IPOs. I'm not saying you can't make a lot. Look, I mean, people that got pre-IPO, like if you were a private accredited investor, you could have bought SpaceX stock for $25 to $50 over the past couple of years. If you did pre-IPO, you could have bought at $135. Right now, it's trading about $160, right? So I'm not saying you can't make money. I'm saying how are you going to get access to that money printer first? Because a lot of these people, you got to get closer to the money printer if you want to get ahead if you're playing these fiat games. With Bitcoin, I like it because there's none of that. I think it's a fair and free market. I think everything was done fairly from the mining aspects and all that. So, in my opinion, I think that is one of the best things to ever happen to the investing world is Bitcoin. Anyways, guys, you let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this one. Stay safe out there investing in these IPOs, and I'll see you later.